Hi, and welcome to OTH Sports View. I'm Chuck Pollock, sports editor of the Times Herald, and with me are the usual suspects. On my right, in his second year covering the Bona women, is Jeff Madigan. And on the left, ninth season covering the Bona men, is JP Butler. And it was a winning week for both teams, I should say, and we'll talk about the women first. This is how important Sunday's game involving the Bona women in Albany was. Jeff didn't use his season ticket to the Bills. Instead, he went and covered the game, and he was rewarded with a victory that, Jeff, I don't think we anticipated coming in, given the pedigree Albany had with the NCAA tournament.
No, that's a great Albany team they beat. The Bonnies beat on Sunday. I know I didn't get a chance to go to the Bills game, but I was certainly watching it. I could afford to skip the 0-13 Browns. But anyway, yeah, great win for the Bonnies over Albany. 4 players in double figures for the first time this season, and right there, that's going to be a winning formula for this team. If you have 4 players at 10, 11 points right there, you've got 45 points. You get some team production off the bench. 67 points they scored on Sunday, which is the second highest they've had all season. Great win for them against an Albany team that's projected to win the America East for the 6th straight year NCAA tournament team the last 5 years. I mean, great win. That's all I can say.
One of the things that came out of that, among others, was the fact that the Atlantic 10 verified what we've known over the last several weeks. Jaleesa Terry is the real deal.
Yeah, another Freshman of the Week, Rookie of the Week award for her great game on Sunday, 13 points. She's having a great time since she's come into the starting lineup. 2-time Rookie of the Week award, and I expect some more once we get into A-10 play and further on.
I'm thinking that you go from one tough test on your home floor.
Yeah.
Now they've got one on a visiting floor with a real tough team playing against Buffalo.
Yeah, really tough tomorrow. Tomorrow afternoon against the University at Buffalo. Noon game against 8-0 Buffalo. They've already won 2 games against Atlantic 10 opponents. They beat Duquesne and they beat UMass. Just a great Buffalo team. NCAA tournament last year. I haven't looked it up yet, but when I talked to Coach Fleming, I think he said they've won something like they've only lost 1 game since December of last year or something along those lines. Really good team. They won the MAC tournament last year out of nowhere as an 8 seed in the tournament, and they certainly show no signs of slowing down off to an 8-0 start already this year.
Final thought. This is one last game coming down to the end of the non-conference season before they get into A-10 play. I think our birthright as journalists is we tend to be more negative.
Not me.
It would seem to me that maybe, though, the Bona women have played a shade better than we might have anticipated in the non-conference.
Yeah, right now they're 5-6, and they have a good chance to go to 6-6 with a win over Buffalo tomorrow. Now, anything can happen once they get on the court. If they play like they did on last Sunday, they certainly have a chance to win. They have a chance to win any game they're going to play if they play like they did last Sunday. Great defense, great offense. 67 points is not something they were doing every game this year. Just one other time they did get 70 against Colgate. I don't think that they would be anything better than for the team to finish non-conference play at 6-6 overall. Then you get a fresh slate going into conference play starting the following Wednesday against Rhode Island. They're probably a little better than we expected. There's probably a couple of games they would want back. The Canisius game, being here, allowing 74. Maybe they want Niagara back, the first game of the year. But I think they've exceeded expectations thus far, for sure.
A good week for the Bona men, and we'll talk about them next. One lucky thing about working in our business, JP, is that it's easy for us to project what a team's going to do. So we looked at the schedule and said, oh, no big deal. Bonnies win out, and they're going to be 9-3 at the end of the non-conference season. Well, we were right, sort of. A win over Niagara, a win over Army, but they were more tense than we might have expected, but they also turned out to be good victories.
Right. I think sometimes we underestimate a little bit just how up for this kind of a game another team might be.
Right.
For Niagara, from the standpoint that no matter what, your coaches say it all the time, but there's maybe some truth to the fact that it is a rivalry game. They're looking at it as one of their biggest games of the season, so they'll be up for it. Army's looking at it as an opportunity for their program, I think, to come in here to play an Atlantic 10 team on the road and prove that they can stay in it. And You know, for both, I think Niagara is still struggling and finding its way under Chris Casey, but this is probably the most competitive team he's had since he's been there, and you could see that on Saturday. And last night, I mean, with Army, you know, Coach Mark Schmidt was right. I mean, this team, you wouldn't notice it because they'd come in ranked number 237 in the Ken Palm rankings. They're only 5-5. They're kind of rebuilding after losing all their starters from a postseason team last year, but they were pretty skilled. They were good. They could shoot the ball. They were disciplined. They ran a good offense. You compared it to Davidson's offense, just very, you know, a lot of motion, a lot of ball movement. They were good at that. But, you know, I think for Bona, just it was good to see that they were able to close out both games, and that was such a big part of what made them pretty good last year, the ability to close out. Yeah. That's what they were able to do in these last two games. But, you know, at the same time, make no mistake, those would have been two, you know, if they'd lost either of them, just horrible losses. So they did what they needed to do, and I think Thursday's the same thing with Canisius, and then they'll be in that position where you've got these 3 games against lower-ranked teams that you really have to beat. 2 of them at home, 1 on a neutral court against a low team. You've got to win these games. They've got 2 out of 3 in the books so far.
What was undeniable, and it seems like we can write this story every single game, but Jalen Adams reaffirmed the fact that he is the man on this team. Both the games we're talking about, Niagara and Army, his partner, Matt Mobley, was just not himself. It didn't matter because Jalen took those games over.
You know, I'll tell you what, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself here, but I feel like probably sooner rather than later, we're going to be talking about him as the best guard in school history. I mean, it's just going in that direction, and he still has a lot left to do in front of him here, but what he's done to this point, and now, you know, this year, you know, not only scoring the way he is, and he's up over 23 points a game again, which puts him in the top 10 nationally, but just the way he's controlling games, those big personal runs he's been able to go on to kind of bail them out when they need to, the big shots that he's hit at the end of games. He had the one against UNC Wilmington that could have won that game if the guy didn't come down for UNC Wilmington and make the game-winning shot. That would have been another instance right there. And the ability to facilitate the way he does. Here's a guy who has 31 points last night, which, you know, you might have a high-scoring guard whose job it is just to go out and score, but here he is with double-digit assists in the same game. Pretty remarkable. He's second in the league in assists right now and still scoring the way he is. He obviously shoots the ball, you know, as well as he does, and as Schmidt said, to play at those 3 levels where he can, you know, where he can shoot the three-pointer the way he does, where he can score inside and where he can get to the basket and either finish or get to the free throw line. He does all of those things well. He's already had 1,000 points 11 games into his junior season, and if you factor in the fact that he missed the last 9 games of his freshman year with that broken finger, he basically hit 1,000 points in his first 2 seasons. That's, you know, pretty unheard of. You probably have to go back. I mean, Marcus Posley did that, but he was a junior and senior. You'd have to go back a long time in Bona history to find, you know, a guy who maybe did it in just, you know, his first 2 was, you know, kind of mostly an underclassman. But, you know, so just having him on the floor is going to give them a chance in every game. And if they continue to have a situation here where they get help the way they did, Matt Mobley's been kind of quiet these last 2 games. Ever since he didn't start that Niagara game, he's been kind of off. Right. But if they can continue to have, you know, what they did on last night with Denzel Gregg doing what he did, with David Ando scoring the way he did in the second half, you know, that's what I think they're going to need to be maybe as good as we think or they think they can be this year.
One of the things that was interesting to me last night when I got back, I thought the exact thing you brought up. He missed 9 games as a freshman, so in effect, 9 games into this season, he would be on pace to score 2,000 points. And the list is pretty short in Bona history. What's interesting to me, And the Army coach, Jimmy Allen, brought this up, and this was brought up by Chris Casey as well. The points are great, but aside from that, he's not a me guy. He shares the ball, and you see somebody like a David Ando, who I don't know that we thought was going to be a contributor. He is.
Yeah, maybe not to this extent. I thought that he would be somebody they would, certainly play and rely on to some extent because he's a senior transfer. He had success at his last school, Liberty, and he looks the part. He's a big forward, but who's actually pretty smooth and can move a little bit. You know what I mean? I don't think we thought he was going to be shooting threes the way he has been these last 5 or 6 games or so. But that's kind of the thing with Adams is, as Alan said last night, you have to make decisions on what you're going to do with him. Do we try to totally stop him, and now there's other guys who can maybe beat us? Do we, what are we going to do? Even on, something like, ball screens, he mentioned, okay, we're going to make sure that we don't let Adams off ball screen to get to the rim or to get an open shot, because if you give him even this much room, he's probably going to make it. So they put all their effort into stopping him. Adam, kicks it out off the the pop to Ando on a screen. Now he's got a wide open shot. And so it's got to drive, opposing coaches crazy, because that's what makes him so good. Not just the ability to go out and score 20 a game. There are a lot of good guards that can go out and score points, but just the way he changes how you have to defend, how you have to play, what you have to worry about. And if Bona can continue, like I said, to get guys, if Mobley, kind of starts to do what he was doing, before these last 2 games, and Ando can be that guy at times, and Greg can be that guy at times, occasionally in Idris Taki. We'll see what Nelson Caputo ultimately brings. He hasn't gotten a ton of time yet since he's been back. That's what I think they had in mind in the preseason when they thought, okay, we think we can be as good this year as we were last year.
One of the interesting concessions that Mark Schmidt made last night, and it was really unforced, he volunteered this. He said, did we think that Jalen Adams would be this good? And he said, no, which is, I was glad to hear, because that's the impression. Yep. Final thought, Bona fans are kind of spoiled. The yardstick they put on the team now is the Atlantic 10. But we know that Niagara, Canisius, UB, those teams, this is a big game when they play the Bonnies, because it's almost a step up in class. They've got one more to get against Canisius here at the RC on Thursday. And I'm sure when you talk to Schmidt, again, he's going to say, they do this and this and this. Well, we've got to be wary.
Right. And he said at the beginning of the week when we were talking about Army, I said, okay, you got, 2 games left here. To close it out, to end on a high note, to win these games that, even he had to acknowledge a little bit that they're expected to win. But, while saying, hey, it's not just, I think some people want to think, it's just these last 3 are in the bag, and then let's get to UMass and we'll start from there. Well, that's not necessarily the case, and we saw that last night with Army, and, now with Canisius. This, I think in the beginning of the season, looked like maybe an easier win, because they were amidst a coaching change. They lost some guys from last year. They weren't picked to finish very high in the MAC. We didn't know really what to expect in this first year with Turner Gill over there, or Turner Gill, the football coach, Reggie Witherspoon. But they're playing much better of late. It looks like he's getting them to kind of buy into his system and seeing that they can have success here. And the thing that really sold me on it was the second game of that doubleheader on Saturday. I was in the media room doing my Bona Niagara story while watching that Canisius UB game.
Pretty impressive win.
An impressive win. A great game to watch. I was just kind of watching it out of the corner of my eye. High scoring game, and for Canisius to beat what is supposed to be a pretty good UB team again this year.
Right.
That's a nice win. That's a win that has to tell you, okay, this isn't just going to be a gimme on Thursday. But to me, the whole thing again is, if we're really talking about this team as being this good again this year, then you absolutely have to win this game at home. If it was up there, if it was even in KeyBank Center, maybe that's a little bit different story. But these are 3 games you're ending on. who were all at one point just a week ago 200 and lower in the Ken Palm rankings. Canisius is a little higher now; they're up into like the 170s, but still, you have to be able to beat, you know, a Niagara on a neutral floor, Army and Canisius at home in this building. If you're going to be good, you can't. You know, how good are you if you have a loss to a, you know, 200 or lower at home is all. And so that's what it is. That's what's separating them from 9-3. I would have put them right around that area, maybe 10-2. You know, I could have said, but probably 9-3, because you're always going to get that one loss that maybe you weren't expecting. Still pretty good. You know, people are going to be disappointed in the UNC Wilmington loss, but 9-3 would still actually be their highest winning percentage in the non-conference in Schmidt's 10 years. And so, you know, better than last year's actually, and they were 8-3. And then they'll have, you know, a week to regroup and, you know, get ready for the A-10 season and the very first one. Again, going to be difficult on the road at UMass. And so, you know, we'll see where they are after Thursday.
We'll be back with another edition of OTH Sports View next week.